I didn't realize something was wrong when we stopped laughing, not even when we stopped touching each other without thinking. I understood it later, when our life began to feel like we were carefully staying out of each other's way. Her name was Emily. Mine is Michael. We had been married for 12 years, long enough to remember who someone used to be, and long enough to slowly lose certainty about who they had become. Our house stood in a quiet neighborhood, where mornings sounded like a neighbor starting an old pickup truck, and evenings ended with the automatic sprinklers clicking on at exactly 9. The house wasn't the problem. Work wasn't either. Money never was. The problem was the silence. It didn't arrive suddenly. It settled in, and then it stayed. Emily woke up before me most mornings. I knew that because when I came into the kitchen, there was always a coffee cup in the sink. She never washed it right away, not because she forgot, but because she was already late for something. I never asked what. I started noticing details, how she stopped asking what time I'd be home, how she no longer checked whether I was tired, how her "fine" at the end of the day sounded exactly the same every time. We didn't argue anymore. At the time, I thought that meant we were mature, that we had outgrown the need to fight. Now, I know it meant something else. We had outgrown the belief that fighting could change anything. In the evenings, we sat in the same room but lived in different spaces. She was on the couch with her laptop. I was at the table with my phone. The TV stayed on for background noise. I don't remember what we watched. I only remember the sound. Flat, constant, emotionally irrelevant. Sometimes Emily looked at me, not for long, just long enough to suggest there was something she might say, if she could decide whether it was worth saying at all. I pretended not to notice, not because I didn't care, but because I was afraid of hearing something I wasn't ready to carry. That night, she asked if I had bought bread. I said I forgot. She nodded, no irritation, no pause. That was what felt wrong. The next day, we came home together. The elevator in our building was slow, as if it wanted people time to think. I had always hated that about it, especially with her. We stepped inside without speaking. The doors closed. The elevator began to rise, shuddering slightly, the way it always did. I held a grocery bag in my hand. Emily held her keys, gripping them harder than necessary. Between the 4th and 5th floor, the elevator stopped. There was no jolt, no alarm. It simply ceased to move. I knew immediately it wouldn't be quick. In this building, nothing ever was. I said it looked like we were stuck. She didn't answer. She exhaled, not in frustration, but almost with recognition, as if she had expected this. The light inside the elevator was yellow and tired. I noticed Emily wasn't looking at the buttons, but at our reflection in the metal wall, at both of us together, as though she hadn't seen us like that in a long time. I reached toward the emergency button, then hesitated. I don't know why. Maybe because I suddenly understood something simple and uncomfortable. For the first time in months, we had nowhere else to go. And in that narrow, suspended silence, it became clear. If anything was going to be said, it would be said here. Finally pressed the emergency button. It made a dull sound, like it had been woken up unwillingly. Somewhere far above us, a voice answered, distorted, tired, professional. I explained where we were, 4th floor. Between floors, actually. The voice said someone would be sent. No urgency, no apology, just procedure. I thanked them and let my hand fall back to my side. We stood there, not facing each other, not turning away either. I noticed the grocery bag again. The bread inside was already starting to lose its shape, pressed against the milk carton. I thought about how small things get damaged quietly, without anyone noticing right away. Emily shifted her weight. The metal floor made a soft sound under her shoes. She said something about how the elevator had been acting strange for weeks. Not complaining, just stating it. I nodded, even though I had no idea whether that was true. Silence returned, thicker this time. I realized I was aware of her in a way I hadn't been for months. The way she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, the faint crease between her eyebrows that only appeared when she was tired, not angry. I wondered when I had stopped paying attention to these things, or if I had ever really paid attention at all. She asked how my day was. It wasn't a meaningful question. We both knew that. It was the kind of question people ask when they're testing the temperature of a room. I said it was fine. She nodded again, the same nod from the night before, efficient, closed. I felt something tighten in my chest, not pain exactly, more like pressure, as if a door inside me had been closed for so long that opening it now would make a noise. I told her I might be late the next day, that there was a meeting I couldn't reschedule. She understood, but she said it too quickly. That was another thing I had started noticing, how fast she agreed with everything, as if disagreement required energy she no longer wanted to spend on us. The elevator lights flickered briefly, not enough to scare us, just enough to remind us that we were suspended, not going up, not going down. Emily leaned her head back against the wall. She closed her eyes for a moment. I don't think she was resting. I think she was gathering herself. She said, very quietly, that she had been thinking about changing some things in the house, rearranging, getting rid of what we didn't need anymore. I knew she wasn't talking about furniture. I said that sounded like a good idea. Another nod. I wondered if this was how things ended, not with shouting or betrayal, but with calm conversations about unnecessary objects, with decisions made so gently that no one could accuse the other of causing damage. Time stretched. My phone still had no signal. I checked it anyway, out of habit. She noticed. I could tell by the way her eyes opened slightly, then closed again. I wanted to tell her that there was nothing else, no messages, no one waiting for me on the other side of this silence, but the words stayed where they were. Instead, I asked if she remembered the first apartment we lived in, the one with the broken heater and the neighbor who played music too loudly at night. She smiled, not fully, just enough. She said she remembered how cold it was, how we slept in sweaters, how we laughed about it in the mornings. Her voice didn't change, but her hands did. They tightened around her keys, then relaxed again. I realized something then. Memory was safer than the present. You could touch it without consequences. You could talk about it without risking anything new. The elevator made a faint mechanical sound. A promise, maybe, or a lie. Emily opened her eyes at me, directly this time. Not at my reflection, at me. She didn't know when things had started to feel so heavy, that she kept waiting for a moment when it would feel easier again. She didn't say my name. She didn't accuse me of anything. That made it worse. I wanted to tell her that I felt it too, that the weight wasn't hers alone, that I had been carrying it badly, quietly, selfishly. But instead, I asked if she wanted to sit down. There was nowhere to sit. She almost laughed at that. Almost. And in that almost laughter, I felt how close we were to something honest and how easily we could still step away from it. Time inside the elevator stopped behaving normally. Minutes didn't move forward. They expanded. Each one felt stretched, hollow, like it was waiting to be filled with something neither of us knew how to offer. Emily slid down the wall slightly, not sitting, just lowering herself enough to rest her back more comfortably. She crossed her arms. She said she didn't know when things had started to feel so heavy, that she kept waiting for a moment when it would feel easier again. She didn't say my name. She didn't accuse me of anything. That made it worse. I wanted to tell her that I felt it too, that the weight wasn't hers alone, that I had been carrying it badly, quietly, selfishly. But instead, I asked if she wanted to sit down. There was nowhere to sit. She almost laughed at that. Almost. And in that almost laughter, I felt how close we were to something honest and how easily we could still step away from it. Time inside the elevator stopped behaving normally. Minutes didn't move forward, they expanded. Each one felt stretched, hollow, like it was waiting to be filled with something neither of us knew how to offer. Emily slid down the wall slightly, not sitting, just lowering herself enough to rest her back more comfortably. She crossed her arms, then uncrossed them, as if she couldn't decide what felt safer. I told her the repair crew would probably take a while. She said that was okay, but she said it the same way she had said everything else lately, as if okay was just a placeholder, not an actual feeling. I became aware of my breathing. Too loud, too deliberate. I tried to soften it. The grocery bag was getting heavier in my hand, even though nothing inside it had changed. I switched hands. The paper crinkled sharply in the quiet space, and I immediately regretted the sound. Emily glanced at the bag, then away. She asked if I ever missed how things used to be. Not a specific time, not a specific memory, just before. I said I wasn't sure what before meant anymore. That wasn't entirely true. I knew exactly what she meant. I just didn't know how to reach it without admitting how far we'd drifted from it. She nodded slowly, like she was filing that answer away rather than reacting to it. I noticed her fingers again, the way she kept rolling the keys against each other, a small, nervous rhythm. I wondered how long she had been doing that without me noticing. She said she felt like we had become very good at managing each other, at avoiding friction, at keeping the peace. She paused, then added that peace didn't feel like connection. I leaned my shoulder against the opposite wall. The metal was cool through my shirt, grounding. I wanted to argue, to say that relationships changed, that comfort replaced intensity, that this was normal, but the words felt thin even before I could shape them. Instead, I said that I didn't know how to talk without making things worse. That made her look at me again. Not sharply, not accusingly, just openly. She said she felt the same way, that every serious conversation in her head ended with one of us leaving the room, so she stopped starting them altogether. That landed heavier than I expected. The elevator hummed, not movement, just electricity, a reminder that the world outside this box still existed. I realized then that neither of us was angry. We were tired. Tired of guessing, tired of adjusting, tired of pretending that silence was kindness. Emily said she sometimes wondered whether we were still choosing each other or just continuing out of habit. She didn't ask me the question directly. She didn't need to. I looked at the floor numbers again, still between 4 and 5, suspended, incomplete. And for the first time, I understood that whatever happened next wouldn't be decided by a dramatic moment, but by whether either of us was willing to say one honest thing without knowing where it would lead. The elevator didn't move. At some point, I stopped checking the panel altogether. The numbers had become meaningless, like they were marking a place we were no longer really in, between floors, between decisions. Emily shifted closer to the wall, drawing one knee up slightly, not for comfort, but for containment, as if making herself smaller would make the moment easier to manage. I noticed how quiet she had become. Not withdrawn, deliberate. People often confuse silence with absence, but this wasn't absence. This was someone choosing their words carefully, maybe for the last time. I said her name. Just that. Nothing after it. She looked at me, and for a second, I thought she wouldn't answer at all. Then she asked if I remembered the night we decided to get married. Not the proposal, the actual decision. The quiet one that came later when the excitement had settled and reality had started asking questions. I said I did. We were sitting on the floor of that tiny apartment, backs against the couch, eating takeout straight from the containers. She had asked whether I thought love was enough. I had said yes, too quickly, with too much certainty. Emily said she had believed me, not because I sounded convincing, but because she wanted to. That landed somewhere deep and uncomfortable. She said she'd been thinking lately about how often she made herself smaller in this relationship. Not dramatically, just subtly, choosing words that wouldn't start discussions, letting things pass because they seemed minor, convincing herself that wanting less was the same as needing less. I didn't interrupt. Not because I was being respectful, but because I was afraid that if I spoke, I'd instinctively defend myself, and I wasn't sure I wanted to do that anymore. She said she didn't blame me, which somehow felt worse than if she had. She said it was easier to believe we were both just tired than to admit we might be unhappy, easier to adjust expectations than to question the foundation. The elevator light flickered again. Longer this time, long enough for both of us to look up instinctively. Nothing happened. I realized then that I had been waiting for an external interruption, a technician, a noise, a signal, something that would break the tension without us having to. Emily noticed my glance. She said she sometimes imagined what it would feel like to live in a place where she didn't have to constantly translate herself, where her silence didn't feel like a compromise. I asked her if she wanted to leave. The words came out flat, not dramatic, not pleading, just honest. She didn't answer right away. She studied the keys in her hand again, the same nervous motion, slower now, more intentional. She said she didn't know, that leaving felt terrifying, but staying exactly as we were felt like disappearing slowly. I felt something shift in me then. Not panic, not relief, clarity. I told her that I had been afraid of conflict for so long that I mistook distance for peace, that I thought keeping things stable meant keeping them intact, that I hadn't realized how lonely that made both of us. She listened, really listened. No nodding, no interruptions. When I finished, she asked a question I hadn't expected. She asked whether I still wanted this, not the version of us that existed in memory, but the one standing here now, imperfect and exposed. I didn't answer immediately, not because I didn't know the answer, but because for the first time I understood that the answer mattered more than the timing. The elevator made a low mechanical sound then, different from before. Not movement, preparation. Emily and I both noticed. Neither of us moved. Because in that moment, suspended between floors, I realized something simple and devastating. Whatever direction we went next wouldn't be chosen by the elevator. It would be chosen by what we were finally willing to say, or still afraid to. We stepped out of the building together, but not side by side. The front door closed behind us with a soft, indifferent sound, the kind that suggested it would close again no matter who walked through it. The air outside was cool, slightly damp, not cold enough to hurt, just enough to remind you that you were awake. Emily stopped near the steps. She didn't sit down. She just stood there, holding her keys, turning them once in her hand, then stilling them completely. I stayed a few feet away, not because I wanted distance, but because I didn't know how close I was allowed to be anymore. The street was quiet. A A car passed somewhere down the block. Someone laughed from an open window above us, and then the sound disappeared. Emily said she had rehearsed this conversation many times, usually alone, usually at night. She said in those versions she sounded calmer, more reasonable, less afraid. She looked at me when she said afraid. She said she didn't want to leave angry. She didn't want to rewrite our entire history just to justify a decision she hadn't even fully made yet. She paused, then said something smaller. She said she missed being chosen. Not loved, chosen. I felt that land immediately because I knew exactly what she meant. I told her I thought I was choosing her every day, by staying, by not leaving, by keeping things running. I said I thought consistency was commitment. She listened, then she shook her head slightly, not dismissive, just tired. She said staying wasn't the same as choosing. That choosing required intention, risk, sometimes even conflict, and that what we had been doing lately felt more like maintenance than love. That word, maintenance, stayed between us. I thought about all the times I had avoided saying something difficult because I didn't want to ruin the evening. All the times I had postponed conversations, telling myself there would be a better moment, a calmer moment, a safer one. She said she didn't want to disappear quietly inside a life that looked fine from the outside, that she was afraid one day she would wake up and realize she had trained herself not to want too much, and that there was no way back from that. I asked her if there was still a way back for us. She didn't answer immediately. She looked at the building behind us, at the windows, at the familiar shapes of a life we had built, slowly, carefully. She said she didn't know, and then she said something else. She said that for the first time in a while, she needed to choose herself, not as a rejection of me, but as an act of survival. I wanted to argue, to ask for time, to promise change, but standing there, under the soft yellow light of the entryway, I understood something I hadn't before. Promises spoken at the edge of loss often sound more sincere than they are. I told her that I didn't want to be someone she had to shrink for, that if staying meant she had to become quieter, smaller, more patient than she already was, then staying wasn't love, it was fear. She looked surprised, not because she disagreed, but because I had finally said something true without cushioning it. She asked what that meant for us. I said it meant we needed to stop pretending we were okay just because we were still standing in the same place. We stood there for a long moment, neither of us moving, neither of us reaching out. Finally, she nodded, slowly, once. She said, "Thank you." Not for agreeing, for understanding. We didn't hug. We didn't make plans. She walked toward the steps, then stopped, turned back, just enough to say my name. I looked at her. She said that whatever happened next, she was glad we hadn't stayed silent. Then she went inside. I stayed outside for a while longer, listening to the building breathe, to the city continue, to life, indifferent and steady. And for the first time, I didn't confuse the absence of noise with peace. It had been 5 months. I knew that because the weather had changed in small, undeniable ways. The mornings were colder, the light came later, and the apartment, our old apartment, sounded different when I unlocked the door. Quieter, but not empty. Some things were gone, not dramatically, just missing in the way you only notice after you reach for them without thinking. Emily's mug, the extra blanket on the couch, the plant she always insisted would survive if I just remembered to water it. It hadn't. I moved more slowly now, not out of sadness, out of awareness. I paid attention to where I put things, to when I spoke, to what I avoided saying, even to myself. That surprised me the most. One evening, while walking home, I passed the building where the elevator had stopped all those months ago. I didn't look up at the windows. I didn't need to. I remembered the feeling instead. That strange suspension, the moment where nothing moved and everything changed. Emily and I spoke occasionally, not often. Messages that didn't carry weight, practical things, neutral updates. Enough to know the other existed, not enough to lean on. Once, she told me she had found a smaller place, closer to work. She said it felt strange at first, being alone with her thoughts. Then, she said, it felt honest. I didn't ask what that meant. I understood. I had started therapy, not because I was broken, but because I didn't want to keep misunderstanding myself. I learned that silence isn't always kindness, that avoidance can wear the same mask as patience, that staying requires just as much courage as leaving. Some nights I thought about reaching out, not to fix things, just to ask how she was really doing. Most nights, I didn't. Not because I didn't care, but because I finally understood that caring didn't always mean intervening. One morning, while making coffee, I noticed something simple. The cup I was holding had a small crack along the side. It hadn't shattered, it still worked, but it would never be what it used to be. I didn't replace it. I drank from it, carefully. And standing there, watching the steam rise in the quiet kitchen, I realized something I hadn't been able to say before. Some relationships don't fail. They finish. Not loudly, not cleanly. They end the way they lived, in pauses, in restraint, in things left unsaid. And sometimes, that's not a tragedy. Sometimes, it's just the truth, arriving late, but honestly.